What would you do if you were given a second chance at life? Because let me tell you, when you stand on the edge and feel like you've crossed the point of no return, something incredible happens. I've seen it, I've felt it. The kind of peace that comes when you realize you're not done yet. You're not just surviving, you're alive, with a purpose, with a chance to change everything. But here's the thing. You won't get a second chance if you don't take this one. You're in control. The moment to turn your life around is right now, but the question is, will you? Will you choose to make it count?
Before we proceed into this incredible testimony, I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt like life was trying to tell you something? Like there's a bigger picture you've yet to see? Well, you're about to hear a story that could change everything for you. If you're ready to feel inspired and awakened, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. And as you listen, drop a prayer or your thoughts in the comments below. Let's make this a space for reflection and hope. Now, let's begin.
Hello, my name is Clara. I'm 35 years old, a school teacher, and a single mom to 2 boys. My life was busy but ordinary. Most days were a cycle of lesson plans, bills, and making sure my kids were fed and happy. There was nothing particularly remarkable about me, or so I thought. One day, I decided to fast. I'd done it before, nothing extreme, just a few days to pray and refocus. But this time, something felt different. It was like a quiet nudge in my heart telling me, go deeper. I didn't understand it completely, but I followed the urge. I fasted longer, prayed more, and spent hours pouring my soul into asking for things I didn't even have the words to name. It was exhausting, but something inside me felt lighter. Like I was shedding invisible weights I didn't even know I'd been carrying. I thought I was doing something good, something right. But I didn't realize I was stepping into a realm far beyond what I could comprehend. That day started like any other. I was in the kitchen, slicing an apple for my youngest son. Suddenly, I felt lightheaded. My vision blurred, and my body just gave out. I remember hitting the floor. My son was calling, "Mom! Mom!" His voice was frantic, but it sounded far away. Then, everything went silent. I thought I had passed out, but it was different. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like a weight pressing against my chest. And then, I felt it. Something was pulling me. It wasn't a gentle tug. It was strong, relentless, like unseen hands dragging me into an endless void. I couldn't resist. My body felt paralyzed. The darkness around me wasn't empty. It was alive, pulsating with a presence I couldn't see but could feel everywhere. Have you ever felt like you were being watched when you were alone? Like there was someone, or something, just out of sight? That's what it felt like, except there was no doubt. I was being watched. Then came the sound. A rushing wind, growing louder and louder until it felt like it was tearing me apart. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. My thoughts raced. Was this hell? Was I being punished? And then, just as suddenly, the darkness gave way. There was light. Bright, overwhelming light. For a moment, I thought I was safe, that this was heaven. But it wasn't. I wasn't saved. I was standing on the threshold. In the middle of that light, a figure appeared. It wasn't a man or a woman. It was tall, radiant, cloaked in something so bright I couldn't look directly at it. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. My whole being trembled in its presence. Then it spoke. "Clara," it said, in a voice that wasn't loud but seemed to echo everywhere. You are no longer in your world. You stand here now as your soul, stripped of all titles, stripped of all excuses. Do you wish to see what fasting has done in the realm beyond? I couldn't speak. I couldn't even think. I just nodded. And that's when it began. What I saw next changed everything I thought I knew about fasting, life, and the battles we fight without even realizing it. Fasting isn't just a practice. It's a weapon. Let me show you what I saw. But be warned, this may change the way you look at your own life forever. Encounter with the spirit realm gatekeeper. As I stood there, frozen in the overwhelming light, the figure began to move. It didn't walk like we do, it glided, like it was part of the air itself. I wanted to ask where I was, what was happening to me, but my mouth wouldn't work. Then, the light started to shift. It dimmed just enough for me to see where I was. It wasn't heaven. Not yet. It was a boundary. A threshold between what we know and what comes after. And that's when I saw him. A figure appeared in the distance. Unlike the radiant being, this one was darker, heavier. It wasn't evil, at least, not in the way you'd think, but it carried a weight that made my chest tighten. I knew, deep inside, that this wasn't someone you could argue with. This was the gatekeeper. He looked at me, and I swear he could see everything. Every thought, every mistake, every hidden corner of my soul. His eyes didn't blink, and when he spoke, it was with a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Why have you come? The question wasn't gentle. It wasn't curious. It was sharp, demanding. I didn't know how to answer. Was I even supposed to be here? My mind was racing. Was this where I was meant to go? Or was I being judged? I didn't mean to come here, I finally whispered, though I wasn't even sure if I was speaking out loud. I was fasting. I don't understand. His expression didn't change, but his presence seemed to grow heavier. Fasting, he said, almost like the word itself carried power. Do you know what it means in the spirit realm? I shook my head. I thought I knew. I thought it was about prayer, about discipline, about focusing on God. But now I wasn't so sure. The gatekeeper raised his hand, and the air around us started to ripple. It was like the atmosphere was alive, responding to him. Slowly, a scene began to unfold in front of me. Let me show you, he said. The scene that appeared wasn't what I expected. It was a battlefield. Not like the ones you see in movies with soldiers and weapons. This was different. The air was thick, almost suffocating, and the ground was covered in something that looked like smoke but moved like water. And the figures. Oh, the figures. They weren't human. Some looked like shadows with glowing eyes, while others were twisted, almost unrecognizable shapes. They were fighting, clawing at each other with a ferocity that made my stomach churn. Do you see? The gatekeeper asked. His voice was calm, but the weight of his words felt crushing. Every time you fast, you step into this battle. You can't see it, but your spirit is here, fighting. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. The scene was terrifying, yet I couldn't stop watching. Who are they? I asked, my voice trembling. Some are sent to protect you, he said. Others are sent to destroy you. That's when it hit me. Fasting wasn't just a physical act. It wasn't just skipping meals or saying prayers. It was a spiritual act of war. And every time I had fasted, I had unknowingly joined this battle. The gatekeeper's gaze locked onto mine. When you fast, Clara, do you fast with purpose? Or do you do it out of habit? Because in this realm, your intentions matter. Your prayers matter. Every word, every thought, it all carries weight. I felt a lump in my throat. How many times had I fasted half-heartedly, going through the motions without truly committing myself? How many times had I prayed without focus, thinking it didn't really matter? Many start fasting, the gatekeeper said, his voice cutting through my thoughts. But few finish. And fewer still understand the cost. I wanted to scream, to cry, to beg for another chance. But before I could say anything, the scene began to shift again. The battlefield faded, replaced by something even more shocking. The unseen battles during fasting were about to be revealed. And what I saw next, I wasn't ready for. Do you think you're ready to see it? Because I wasn't. But if you're willing to hear, I'll tell you everything. The unseen battles during fasting. When the battlefield faded, I thought I'd be relieved. I thought maybe the worst was over. But I was wrong. What came next wasn't just something to look at, it was something I could feel. The air around me grew heavy, like invisible hands pressing down on my shoulders. It was hard to breathe, like the atmosphere itself was alive and fighting against me. I wanted to ask the gatekeeper what was happening, but his gaze told me to stay silent. And then I saw it. In the distance, something began to form. At first, it looked like a storm cloud, swirling and pulsing with energy. But as it grew closer, I realized it wasn't just a cloud. It was filled with faces, faces that looked like they were screaming. Some of them looked familiar, like people I'd wronged or memories I'd tried to forget. This, the gatekeeper said, is what fasting stirs up. I didn't understand at first. What do you mean? I whispered, my voice barely audible over the sound of the swirling cloud. When you fast, you disrupt the unseen. You call attention to yourself in realms you cannot see. The forces that wish to destroy you, they don't like it. They fight back. My heart was pounding. I felt exposed, vulnerable. Was this why fasting had always felt so hard? Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. The cloud grew closer, and with it came a sound, a low, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate through my entire body. I could feel the anger, the resistance, the hatred radiating from it. They don't just fight to stop your fasting, the gatekeeper continued. They fight to stop your prayers, your focus, your faith. They whisper lies into your mind. They stir up your doubts. They bring your weaknesses to the surface. I felt a lump form in my throat. How many times had I given up on fasting because of these exact feelings? The exhaustion, the distractions, the overwhelming sense of failure, it all made sense now. But there's more, the gatekeeper said, his voice lowering. Fasting doesn't just reveal them. It reveals you. The cloud stopped just a few feet away from me, and suddenly, it wasn't just faces. It was my face. My fears, my insecurities, my sins, they were all there, staring back at me. When you fast, the gatekeeper said, you are stripped bare. The battles you face are not only external. They are within you, too. Every doubt, every hidden sin, every unspoken fear, it all rises to the surface. Tears streamed down my face. I wanted to turn away, to hide, but I couldn't. I had to look. Do you understand now? The gatekeeper asked. Fasting is not just a practice. It is a purification. A battle against what holds you back, both outside and inside. I nodded, though my heart felt heavy. I thought fasting was just about sacrifice, about discipline. I didn't realize it was about warfare, about breaking chains I didn't even know I had. The cloud began to dissolve, and with it, the weight on my shoulders lifted. But I wasn't the same. I couldn't be. Fasting shakes the unseen, the gatekeeper said, his voice softer now. But it also opens the way for something greater. I looked at him, my eyes still filled with tears. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he extended his hand, and the atmosphere shifted once more. This time, there was no battlefield, no storm cloud. What I saw next was something I will never forget. The heavenly rewards of fasting were waiting to be shown. But are you ready to see them? Because they're not what you'd expect. They're more than you could ever imagine. Let me tell you what I saw. The heavenly rewards of fasting. When the storm passed, and the heaviness lifted, I was left standing in silence. The air felt clearer, lighter, but not in the way you'd expect. It was like the space around me had been cleansed. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe. Then, I noticed something strange. A faint glow started to appear ahead, almost like the light from a candle. But as I stepped closer, it grew brighter, warmer. It wasn't blinding or harsh, it was welcoming, inviting. And then I saw them. It wasn't a place filled with gold or treasures like I'd always imagined. The rewards weren't material. They weren't things you could touch or hold. No. What I saw was far greater than that. The first thing I noticed was peace. It wasn't just the absence of noise or stress. It was peace that filled every part of me, like a weight I didn't know I was carrying had been lifted. Have you ever felt completely safe, like nothing in the world could harm you? Multiply that feeling 1,000 times, and it still wouldn't come close. And then, there was joy. But this wasn't the kind of joy you feel when you get good news or achieve something. This was pure, unshakable joy. The kind that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're meant to be, and nothing can take it away from you. But it didn't stop there. The light grew brighter, and I saw faces. Not strangers, loved ones. People I hadn't seen in years. People I'd prayed for during my fasting. They looked at me with eyes that seemed to say, "We've been waiting for you." And then it hit me. Every prayer I'd ever prayed while fasting wasn't wasted. Every moment of hunger, every tear, every sacrifice, it all mattered. It wasn't just about denying myself, it was about building something eternal. But the most powerful moment came when I heard a voice. It wasn't loud, and it didn't need to be. It was steady, calm, and full of love. "Well done," it said. "You have pressed through, and the heavens have heard you." I can't explain the feeling of those words. It wasn't just approval, it was affirmation. A reminder that fasting doesn't go unnoticed. Every battle fought, every struggle endured, it's all seen. And then, just as I thought the experience couldn't get any deeper, the gatekeeper spoke again. "You have seen the rewards, but there's something more you need to know," he said. "Something that must be shared." "What is it?" I asked, my heart racing. His expression grew serious. "It's the warning. The rapture is closer than you think, and judgment is not far behind. Many are not ready. They don't see what's coming." The warmth of the moment shifted. The peace was still there, but it was mixed with urgency. I could feel it in my chest, like a drum beating faster and faster. The rewards of fasting were incredible, but they weren't just for me. They were a glimpse of what's possible, a reminder of what's at stake. And now, I need to ask you something. Are you ready? Are you prepared for what's ahead? Because the next part of this story, it's not just about rewards. It's about a warning we can't afford to ignore. Let me tell you what I saw next. The warning of the rapture and judgment. As the light from the heavenly realm began to fade, something shifted in the air. The warmth, the peace, the overwhelming love, it all seemed to hang in the balance. And that's when I heard it, the voice. It wasn't the same gentle, welcoming voice I had heard before. This one was deeper, more urgent. Listen closely, the voice said, its tone heavier than before. The time is drawing near. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. Was I hearing this correctly? The rapture is closer than you think, the voice continued. And many are unprepared. Many are still lost, distracted, caught in the noise of their own lives. They don't see what's coming. They don't hear the warning. The weight of the words hit me like a tidal wave. I could feel my chest tighten, my breath short. It was like everything I had seen and experienced in that moment suddenly took on new meaning. The rewards, the peace, the joy, it wasn't just for me. It was for everyone. But not everyone was ready to receive it. Can you imagine? What would happen if we were all suddenly called to answer for everything we've done? How many of us are truly ready to face that? To stand before the Creator and have our lives laid bare, with no more excuses or justifications. I could feel the heaviness in the air, like an invisible pressure pressing down on me. The voice didn't need to say much more. The message was clear, time was running out. And then, the warning came, stronger, louder. You must prepare now. You must wake up. The ground beneath me seemed to shift. I couldn't explain it, but I knew that something big was coming. Something we couldn't escape or avoid. Have you ever had a feeling deep inside that something big was about to happen? That feeling you just can't shake, no matter how hard you try to ignore it. That's what it felt like. Like the universe was holding its breath, waiting for something to unfold. Something that couldn't be stopped. But the scariest part, many people didn't even know. They were going on with their lives, day by day, unaware of the danger. The warning didn't just come with fear, it came with urgency. The sense that, if we didn't change now, we'd be caught unprepared. It wasn't about being good or bad. It was about being awake. Ready. And then the voice faded away, leaving me with a chilling thought, will you be ready? Have you thought about that? Are you ready for what's coming? The warning wasn't just a message, it was a call. A call to action. It's easy to ignore warnings when everything feels fine. But that moment, that voice, it shook me to my core. It reminded me that there is no guarantee of tomorrow. And as I stood there, I realized, maybe that's what fasting had prepared me for. Maybe it wasn't just about the rewards. Maybe it was about getting ready. Just when I thought I couldn't take any more of the weight, a new feeling started to rise within me. Something was changing again. There was more to come, but this time, it wasn't fear. It was hope. That's when I heard the voice again, but this time it was calm. Soothing. You still have time, it said. The choice is yours. But remember, time is running out. And then, everything went quiet. The pressure, the fear, the weight, they all faded. And in that moment of silence, something amazing began to happen. This was not the end. It was only the beginning. I can't fully explain it, but there was a shift. I could feel something pulling me back. Back to the world I had left behind. Back to life. Have you ever felt like you were being given a second chance? A chance to fix the mistakes you've made, to do better, to live better? That's exactly how I felt. The warning of the rapture and judgment had passed, but the real message was something greater. It was a second chance. And it was coming for me. And for you. Let me tell you about the second chance I was given. Let me show you what happened next. Are you ready? Returning to life, the second chance. I was falling. No, it wasn't a typical fall. It was as if everything I had known, everything I had been, was slipping away. The peace, the warmth, the certainty that I was in the right place, all of that was starting to fade, and I couldn't stop it. It felt like I was being pulled back, deeper and deeper, into a space I couldn't control. The light around me dimmed, and for the first time, I felt a strange sensation. I was going back. Back to what? Back to life. It was almost like being torn between two worlds. One full of peace, comfort, and love. The other, familiar but uncertain. That's when I realized I wasn't ready to go back. But the pull was strong, stronger than anything I could have imagined. It was as if something, or someone, was guiding me, telling me that my time wasn't up yet. I felt the force of that decision, the weight of it. The question hit me hard: what have you done with your life so far? Have you ever had that moment where you look back, and suddenly, everything makes you question what you've been doing? What have I really done with my time here on earth? Have I lived the way I should have? Then, it hit me, this wasn't just about my death. This wasn't just about what I had left behind. It was about what I was going back to. The second chance I had been given wasn't just a gift, it was a responsibility. I was being given a second shot at life. Can you imagine? The chance to rewrite the things you regret, to make right what you once thought was lost. But with that gift came something else, a promise. A promise that I had to make the most of this second chance. I wasn't just being sent back to live the same life. No, something had to change. Something had to shift within me. And as I felt the world around me slowly come back into focus, I knew that this was my moment. This was my second chance. My moment to be better, to do better, to live a life that mattered. But I wasn't the only one with this opportunity. Every single one of us has that chance. Every single one of us can make a difference in our lives, right now. Are you ready to take it? Imagine for a moment, what if you were given a second chance? What if you could start over, fix your mistakes, and live with purpose? What would you do with it? Would you choose to make the most of every moment, knowing that life is fragile? Or would you let it slip away again? The power is in your hands. And let me tell you, it's never too late. You see, while I was in that place, I realized something powerful. The second chance wasn't just a gift for me. It's a gift for everyone, you too. The clock is ticking. Life doesn't wait. But it's never too late to begin again. And that brings us to something even more powerful, something we all need to think about deeply. What happens when the second chance is over? What happens when time runs out? You've heard the warnings. But have you really heard them? Have you felt the urgency? The time will come when there will be no more chances. When the call will be too loud to ignore. And that brings us to the question, what about you? Are you ready for what's next? Are you ready to take your second chance? Or will you let it slip away like so many others before? You have a choice. And it's time to decide. What will you do with the time you have left? Now, I've shared with you my experience, my second chance at life. The time I spent in that place, where I saw what truly matters, made me realize something. I'm not the only one who's been given this chance. We all have a chance. Right now, in this moment. I'm asking you, what about you? What are you doing with your time? Are you living the way you want? Are you making choices that will bring you peace? Or are you just going through the motions, waiting for something to change? I want you to really think about this. If you were given a second chance, like I was, how would you change? What would you do differently? Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt that nagging voice inside telling you that there's more to life than what you're living now? That something is missing, but you just can't quite put your finger on it. I can tell you, that voice isn't going away. And trust me, you don't want to ignore it. Because when it's too late, it's too late. Right now, you have the chance to turn things around, to start living the life you've always wanted. You don't have to wait for a miracle. You don't have to wait for a second chance to come from somewhere else. The power is in your hands. But are you ready for it? Are you ready to step up and take that chance, right now? Are you ready to live with purpose, knowing you're making the most out of every single moment? It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking there's always tomorrow. But I've learned that tomorrow isn't promised. You can't waste time hoping for something better to come along. You have to take charge of your life and make it count. So, again, I ask you, what about you? Are you ready to take control of your life, to live the life you deserve? Or will you continue to wait, hoping for a sign, for something to push you forward? The clock is ticking. You have this moment. Don't waste it. The second chance, the one you've been waiting for, is right in front of you. And it's your choice whether to take it or not. What are you waiting for?
You've just heard a story that could shift how you see your life, but the question is, what will you do with it? If this moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs a second chance. And in the comments, leave a prayer, a promise, or even just one word that represents how you're going to live differently after hearing this. Let's inspire each other to make the most of every moment. See you in the next video.